So continuing with 7.2, area and volume with your unit analysis. This is the second video. We're in example 3. And this is very similar to example 2, where we've got material with the dimensions given. And they say it's 1.5 yards wide and 30 yards long. So they want us to change this to square feet. So they want to change it from square yards, which is what we started with here. So I'm going to use as yards squared, and we're changing it to feet squared. So in order to do this, I first of all have to find out what the area of this is. So I'm going to have to take 30 times 1.5 to find out how many square yards that is. And when I do that, I get 45. And I continue on from there. Line times line, because this appeared, there's a number 2 there. So I'm converting yards to feet. Do I know that relationship? Yes, I know that if I put yards down here, which will always be the case, I know that there are 3 feet in 1 yard. And again, I just write the exact same thing twice. And I cancel what I can, so I'm going to cancel these 2 yards with these 2 yards, and I'm left with a foot here and a foot here, so I can write it as feet squared. So I'm going to multiply 3 times 3 times 45, and divide that by my denominator, which is 1. So 3 times 3 is 9, times 45 is 405, and that would be my answer there. So this is example 4, and I took one of the tables from the book and put it right here. I'm going to move it over here and get rid of some of this just so it's out of the way, because what I have there now is all we need. So we've got the Great Pacific Garbage Patch, which is an area of garbage about double the size of Texas floating around in the Pacific Ocean. And they're telling me that that bit of garbage covers 344 million acres of ocean. 344 million acres. They want to convert acres, which is an area, to square miles. Alright, so that's where we're going to have to use this conversion table I have there, because most of us don't know how many acres are in a square mile in order to convert this. So again, we're going to write 344 million, and I'm going to just use the letter A for acres. I'm going to make my time sign, and I'm going to draw my line. And I'm going to put my A for acres on the bottom. Now the question is, do I know any kind of a relationship between acres and miles? Well, right here it says acres in square miles. And that's what I've got, acres and square miles. So it says there's 640 acres to 1 square mile. So I'm going to write 640 on the bottom and 1 square mile on top. So notice, I didn't just write miles, I wrote square miles, because that's what these two equal. And there's always some kind of a conversion that will take you from a length, like you normally know is a mile, to another area that isn't squared. In the last section we were going square feet to square yards, that kind of thing. Well, in this one, acres is not written as a square acre, it's just written as an acre because that is in itself an area. So we're taking a length and changing it to an area, and we don't have to have the squared on there. And we'll run into several like that in the future. And we just take our conversion as we see it here and write it. So notice our conversion up here is square feet to square yards, and that's how we will write it. But here, it's acres to square miles, and that's how we will write it. We will write it however it's written here in our relationship table. So 1 square mile over 640 acres. So what can I do? I can cancel my acres here and cancel my acres here. This is left alone because that's what we're looking for, and we just multiply through 340 million times 1 divided by 640, and when I do all of that, I get 537,500 square miles. And if I remember right, that is about the size of Alaska. So there is an island of garbage floating around in the North Pacific Ocean that is about the size of Alaska. So that kind of gives you a little bit better idea of how big that garbage island is. Okay, so example 5. We've got a farmer that has 75, and again I'm just going to use the letter A for acres, and we are trying to figure out how many square feet he has. So that's what we're looking for. So we're going to have to change from acres to square feet. So let's go ahead and write our conversion here, times line acres here. Now the question is, do I know a relationship between acres and square feet? Well, let's look over here at our table and see. Square inches, square yards, square feet, acres and square feet right there. 1 acre equals 43,560 square feet, which is around the size of a football field. So it kind of gives you an idea of how big an acre is. So there's my conversion. So acre is right there, 1. So I'm going to put the 1 there for 1 acre. And I'm going to put the 43,560 square feet here. Because again, I put the square foot up there because it tells me to, right there. So I'm going to cancel my acres here and my acres here. I'm going to multiply 75 times this. That my conversion is not crossed out or what I want. And I end up getting 3,267,000 square feet in 75 acres. So example 6 is very similar to what we did in example 4 with our garbage island. We have a 256 acre shopping center, and they want to know how many square miles. So we're going from acres to square miles. So I'm going to do 256 acres times line, put acres down here. Oops. And again, I'm going to go back up to my table and see if there's any comparison or relationship between acres and square miles. And there is 640 acres to 1 square mile. So I'm going to put the 640 number down here because that's where my acre is, and I'm going to do that. And then I'm going to take 256 times 1 over 640, and I'm going to divide that out, and I get 0.4 square miles. So even 256 acres seems like a lot of land. It's less than a half a square mile. So that's my conversion there. In example number 7, what we're doing is we're doing metrics. So I took a table from the book and have it there. I'm going to kind of move it over here and just use what we're interested in. I don't really use this to the right very much, although you could. Maybe it'd be simpler. Let's go ahead and leave it there and actually use it, and I'll show you. It may be simpler for you to use it that way. Example 7 says how many square millimeters are in 1 square meter. So they kind of have it backwards. They've given us 1 meter squared, and they're asking us to convert that to millimeters squared. So I've got 1 meter squared times a line here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this conversion chart up here. And notice that, remember on the last chart I said you're going to write down exactly what they have here. So I've got a meter squared here. So I'm trying to go from meters squared to millimeters, but the only thing I have with square meters is decimeters. So I'm going to have to use that conversion first. Now, I've got a meter squared here. I'm going to put a meter squared here. Now remember, in the past we were writing it twice. Well, this particular table already has them squared, so I don't have to write anything twice. I can just do it as they show here. If they already show it as squared, you put it in here as squared, and you don't have to write it twice like we did on the other ones. So 1 meter squared, meter squared. What do I know about meter squared? Well, it shows up on the bottom here, in the bottom here, so I'm going to put 100 decimeters squared on the top. Okay. That being the case, then I can cancel my m's. And decimeters, that's not what I'm looking for, so I'm going to keep going. And again, I'm going to put this down here. And I'm going to see if there's any comparison between decimeters and millimeters. And when I look up here, I've got decimeters, meters to decimeters, which I just used, decimeters to centimeters, but no decimeters to millimeters. So I'm going to use this one and just keep plugging along until I get a millimeter. And I've got a decimeter on the bottom, so I'm going to use this one here. So I'm going to put 1 down here and 100 centimeters squared on top, which means I can cancel that one out and cancel that one out. I am not looking for centimeters, so I keep going. And I put centimeters squared on the bottom. And that's not what I'm looking for. So, is there any relationship between centimeters and millimeters? Yes, there is, right here. When centimeters is on the bottom, 100 millimeters goes on top. And that's squared, which means I can cancel that, cancel that. That's what I'm looking for, so I'm done. So now I'm going to multiply 100 times 100 times 100 all over 1. And when I multiply all those through in 1 meter, 1 square meter, there are 1 million square millimeters. And that's what we get for number 7, example 7.